Well, everybody, welcome to the last meeting of the Infrastructure Committee for this training. I thought the last scheduled meeting. We can always pull one out if you like, but anyway, thanks very much, everybody. If you'd please stand, we'll say the karakia. Whakatakaho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina, kia uta, kia mā taratara kia tai, e hiaki ana te ata kura, hei tiho, hei hoka, hei hohu, ti hei Māori ora. There you go. All right, well, welcome everybody. Please let me or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend the meeting. Morning tea will be at 10:30 unless we are very close to finishing and we'll crack on. So I'll accept apologies, one from Councillor O'Neill. I've got one from Councillor Paul for lateness, but I don't. Oh, yes, for lateness, so she's not here, yeah. She will be joining us a bit later. If there any other apologies?
I will have to leave early if we go too long.
I think it's an apology for interruption. Councillor Young?
Councillor Calvert for lateness.
Councillor Calvert for lateness and leaving early, the Mayor. Okay, do I have I move that motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Day, thank you very much. I put the motion, it's been moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2, or use the machine at home. Sorry? Councillor O'Neill's absent for the whole thing, yeah. Councillor Wolfe? Seems to be less room here. Okay, that's, I declare the motion carried. I call on members to declare any conflicts of interest that they may have in relation to items on the agenda. See shaking of head and thinking by Councillor Foon. Thinking, okay. Okay, confirmation of minutes. So I did have a look through them this morning. I'd like to remind those Northern Ward councillors of your commitment to reach out to the school in regard to the matter we discussed at the last meeting. So I do move the motion that the Infrastructure Committee approves the minutes of the committee meeting held 27 April, having been circulated, and they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Matthews. I now put the motion, which is moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2, or use the buttons at home or wherever you are. Could be Thailand or Fiji. Is he in his office? All right, I declare that motion carried. Agenda item 1.5, items not on the agenda. There are no items not on the agenda. Just love that, that's great. Okay, public participation. So we've got a few today and a few that have dropped out, unfortunately. So fortunately, I think Mike's here. And I guess with a bit of extra time, we can allow a bit of flexibility. Yeah, okay. So I'd like Mike Mallow to come speak to us from Living Street, Aotearoa, about the Aotearoa traffic resolution. Mike, you may recall that because you were speaking with another member of that group, you were going to get 5 minutes each, but is Alan pulled out?
Now Mike's just speaking on behalf.
Yeah, so Mike, if you want to take more than 5 minutes, we'll be happy to accommodate that.
Well, I think I've actually got 10 speaking on behalf of an organisation.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm also going to say a few words on behalf of Raywin Empson, who was scheduled to speak today. So if you can give me any more minutes, I'll be very happy. First of all...
Sorry, Raywin.
Raywin Empson, who was scheduled to be on first from CCS.
Okay, all right then. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Aotearoa, I'd like to congratulate the officers on their excellent response to submissions. I thought it was very good and showing the thinking about the way that modifications have been made. And it's really good to see that a 50k limit is being considered. At the moment, it's the it's an island of 70. It's the only street of 70 in the city, which is bizarre. Coming off Hart Road, you go from 60 to 70 to 50, which is always confuses me. So that's really good. But we're concerned about the pedestrian access. The roundabout will make it the existing route worse, because assuming all traffic uses the roundabout, which will be interesting to see how people are educated to do that and how GPS picks up that's going to be the best route. That route will make that more dangerous because of the increased traffic. But that route will always be the most intuitive, the most direct, the flattest route to the ferry terminal. And it's a bit of an embarrassment that the Inter-Islander recommends people not to walk because it's too dangerous to the walking capital of New Zealand. We note that the access is intended to come from Hut Road. That will always be more difficult and very significant to walkers. It's longer. It's quite a lot longer. It's, according to signage at the ferry terminal, it's 2.1 kilometres to the railway station by Aotea Quay, and it's 2.5. That's nearly a quarter longer going via Hut Road. So no, it's noted that this proposal supports the walking policy. Well, making people walk further is not actually in conformance with that policy. So we'd urge you to Let's Get Welly Moving to reconsider that. The route is, the Aotea Quay is a very good route for walking, except for that slip lane, which is lethal, and people that continue to walk there, you know what pedestrians are like. Pedestrians do what they bloody well like, and someone will come a cropper. So moving on to public places, I'd like to talk about micromobility. Raywin Empson has asked me to make the point that the micromobility definition doesn't include devices for people of limited mobility. So it doesn't include things like mobility scooters, and it appears to prioritise recreational use over people who have to use these devices. So she would like that included in the definition, please. But there's another issue with the micromobility, with the way it's been broadened from skateboards to micromobility as a whole. Micromobility includes bikes, and as we all know, it's illegal to ride a bike on the footpath unless there's signage to say that you can. But the way micromobility is defined and the way public places are defined, what this bylaw says now, it's legal to ride on the footpath unless there are signs telling you not to. Now, so the bylaw is actually in conflict with the law of the land. The assumption that you can do it unless you're stopped in the bylaw is in contradiction with the assumption in the law of the land that you cannot do it unless you have the signage to say that. So we suggest that the clause that talks about you can use micromobility everywhere, which is clause 23 point something, I can't remember what, be modified to reflect that bikes have a different legal status from all those other forms of micromobility, and the bylaw needs to be in conformance with that. I do have one other item, which is about the priority investments, which talks about there being judged against successful delivery against parameters. Now, presumably one of those parameters is that the project does what the council resolved for it to do. And I'd like to draw your attention to project number 9, the Miramar Cutting Cycleway, where the traffic resolution said that there would be separate cycle path and separate footpath installed in this stretch of Miramar Avenue. But that hasn't happened. They've been done for about half the length, but for the other half of the length, what you have resolved to do has been replaced by a shared path. And further along, there are further stretches outside the scope of the traffic resolution that have been converted into de facto shared paths without, as far as I'm aware, any authorisation from yourselves. So if that is included in the definition of complete, and we suggest that it ought to be, the Miramar cutting project is not complete and needs to be reinstated as an active project. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We've got a few questions. I wouldn't mind getting some officer advice on a couple of the points you've made as well, particularly around the micromobility definition. So if someone in the...
Question of Mike, and we perhaps could do that when it comes to the paper, so we're not taking up Mike's time with officer
Sounds good,
advice.
sounds good.
I mean, okay. I want to do that as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, you go.
Looks to me like it's an inadvertent omission there that hasn't an editing issue rather than something. Because if it were if that's what you were actually proposing to do, you'd be proposing to turn every footpath in the city into a shared path, which is something that's quite significant.
I'm a little confused because I thought that wheelchairs and other devices to aid mobility were just considered pedestrians, and so I'm kind of I don't quite follow the logic why we want to include those as micromobility devices, which are different and are bikes and scooters and which are things we don't want on the footpaths.
I agree with that last. The micromobility definition goes into great detail. It describes a huge number of different modes, and what's significant by its absence is the personal limited mobility assistance, and the same definition is used by NZTA in various places, but they include a picture of a mobility scooter as an example of what's included, whereas it is not included in yours, with the implication that people on mobility scooters don't have the same freedom of movement as others do. If the definition were tight, yes, I'd agree with you. But the definition, if it were non-specific, but it's very specific about the particular things it's talking about. But I'm not an expert. I'm presenting Ray Wynn's view.
Thanks. Mike, I'm told officers will address this point during the discussion on the paper, and if you're not able to stay, I'll make sure I communicate to you.
Thanks very much.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Is that both points, Councillor? The public places one and the Miramar Cycleway?
I was talking about the micromobility point, but just on the ferry terminal. So I find it a bit interesting that the council's providing a longer walking opportunity, and a walking group is saying we don't want it. So how do I had this? I won't go into it, but yeah. So.
It's not. We're not objecting to be provided with a longer walking opportunity. We're objecting to having an unsafe, better walking opportunity.
Right, and I guess my real point, I suppose, would be, is it realistic? Do people actually walk from town with bags and stuff to the ferry terminal?
People do walk. Yes.
Actually, I've walked back from it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Sounds good.
And if you're not familiar with the area, it's the most obvious. It appears to be the most obvious route if you're looking for things. And if you're walking from the railway station, you arrive there, you suddenly discover you've got 70k traffic coming around a blind bend fast, which you can't see, where the place you have to cross.
If you're going from the railway station, would you walk through towards the stadium? Yeah. So you need some sort of way from the stadium across to the rail yards.
Well, but then you're going out of the way. I mean, that's why Hart Road is, though it may feel, you may think it's about the same. It's why it's half a kilometre longer, and half a kilometre is quite a lot of extra walking when we're talking about a distance of only 2 kilometres. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. Is there anyone else online? Anything else, Mike?
No, that's it.
Well, very nice to see you, and thanks very much, and we'll be in touch. If you can stay around and hear those answers, that'll be great.
And can I just thank you for your contribution to this committee, and wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. We now have Paula Warren. Paula's going to come and talk to us about the RT key roundabout as well. Is Paula online? Yeah, Paula's online. You there, Paula?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. So essentially my points are very similar to the points that Mike was just making. The obvious route from the railway station to the ferry terminal is down the quays. So, you know, you arrive, and I've seen people do this, you arrive at the railway station, you realise that you miscalculated and you've just missed the shuttle bus, so you walk. And then you get to that point where you find that maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but the ferry's over there, you haven't got time to go anywhere else, so you just keep right on going. I'm a little bit disturbed by the report from the officers, which says that pedestrian numbers are low and therefore we don't need to provide for them. That's effectively what it says. Now, that's also what NZTA said in the Otaki motorway case, that, you know, there aren't cyclists using that state highway, so we don't need to provide cycling facilities for them. And as the submitter in that case said, of course there aren't, we're not all suicidal, but if it was safe for me to cycle, I would. So you should never base a decision on current demand where it's an unpleasant and unsafe route. So, you know, if I'm advising people on how to get to the railway station, I'll advise them to get there early and use the shuttle bus. The Hart Road route is a much longer route and it's a lot less obvious to anybody. And I have had a lot of discussions with council and officers about how you do wayfinding for pedestrians, and the sort of things that you're providing really don't work anyway. So the idea that you can direct some young person with a backpack to take a much longer and inobvious route when there's an obvious route there with your current kind of signage is not going to work either. So what you're proposing to do is going to create a significant hazard, and it is going to add significantly to people's walking distance when they're often in a hurry and they have luggage. So I think that you need to rethink that. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Do we have any questions? The Mayor, Andy.
Thanks, Paula. The obvious question is, what would you do differently? What are you suggesting it to? Because I mean, I've walked that way many a time to get to the ferry, and I understand exactly the concern you've got. What's the suggestion? What do we do? What do we do to fix it in your mind, both short term and potentially longer term?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone down and had another look at it lately, partly because I don't want to get killed. But
you don't have to cross it. You can come back the same way, but it's probably not great.
I mean, the ideal, obviously, is to push the port fence and take people through there. But I haven't looked at it closely to see whether that's feasible with the current railway lines and the way Wholesome's system is set up. I mean, you know, a nice walk down the waterfront is the obvious thing that we need. And then remembering that we also need to be thinking forward to when we have a Nauranga to Petone walkway, cycleway. And again, ideally, you know, when we were doing the Great Harbour Way work, you know, ideally that would continue along the waterfront and you wouldn't then be pushing people inland.
No, I agree with your long-term prognosis, and we have had a number of discussions over the years with Centreport about that, but we are where we are at the moment. Any short-term proposition?
I don't think I've got an answer to the short-term problem, but certainly in the very short term, we need some much better signage that actually gives people much better information.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Just on that last point, I hear our Chief Infrastructure Officer nodding her head and taking a note on that. So, sorry about that. But
well,
any
while
other
she's
questions,
doing that,
colleagues?
Sorry, can I encourage you to also put in signage related to how you go and catch a bus from Thornton Quay? And again, the bus stops there are not obvious and it's not easy to cross from one of the bus stops.
Good as gold. Thanks, Paula. Appreciate it. You have a great day. Nice
Thank
and sunny
you.
up there. Next, we've got Peter Northcote, who's got a PowerPoint, I believe, and we'll also be talking about, in fact, everyone's talking about Aotearoa roundabout, roundabout the story of my triennium.
Morena, councillors, ko Peter Northcote, tauku ingoa. I live in the inner city. During lockdown, I discovered a wonderful circular walking route. It involves going out past the stadium on the outside, through the port, dicing with the death we've all heard about, and coming back down Thornton Quay. And I'm here with a simple plea that's please not to put the roundabout you're considering commissioning later in this meeting into service without having first sorted out what is already a dangerous pedestrian crossing. The simple fact is, the roundabout you're about to approve, because construction needs to start next week, is actually specifically designed to put more traffic through an intersection which you are responsible for and which is already incredibly dangerous. You have a report in front of you which talks about the strategic alignment with a safe and accessible capital city and an affordable, resilient and safe space to live. I call you out on that. The engagement and consultation report, where I look to try and see the feedback that I give, may be hinting at it when it says we will look at reducing the speed limit. And then you come to this out that there seems to be this preoccupation that because the Thornton Quay Hart Road corridor is preferred for walking and cycling provision over the Aotearoa Quay corridor, and therefore we do not propose any further improvements. It's basically saying, hey, this is a dangerous place where people could get seriously injured and die, and we're okay with that. If I was picking up my house, I don't live in an apartment, and turning it around and doing nothing else, you would require me to bring my house up to the current code in every respect. Yet you're excusing yourself from that simple obligation which is essential for health and safety. Disability and accessibility impact. The design has been developed to facilitate the safe movement of pedestrians on the western side of the corridor. That may be true for the roundabout, but you have not completed the job and taken the footpath to the ferry terminal and up over the overbridge to Thornton Quay Hut Road. Health and safety impact. A road safety audit has been completed for the design of the roundabout. Whoopee. I OAA'd you couldn't produce such an audit for the Aotearoa Quay ferry intersection that we're talking about. That completes the job. That is where you're putting the traffic. So let's take a look at it, because I think, I would love councillors to really understand and see the situation that they're putting people through. And we've heard previous submitters talk to this, so let's look at it. Is this going to work? So, catch up. 3 views as we leave your roundabout and we head towards the intersection. First is from halfway down the toll building. Here we're in a 70-kilometre road. We are approaching it. We've got the opportunity to go north of the Inter-Islander or carry on and rejoin the Hut Road if we're making that U-turn. Posted speed 70. You can see there's an advisory speed for the exit of 35. Getting a little bit closer, just at the little stub road that goes off to New Zealand Couriers. Here you are bringing traffic that is unfamiliar with this place, wanting to access the ferry. They're already wondering why they've had to go this way and do this big turnaround in U-turn. Otherwise, they're thinking about getting up the ramp and onto the motorway and moving. What about my speed? How do I manage getting up that ramp? You've also got the issue, which I'm sure you'll have experienced if you've driven the route, of late mergers left. So late mergers left wanting to make the exit then cause a whole lot of shuffling of speed and following distances. And then, as we get to the turnoff, there's no traffic warning of potential pedestrians just around it. Well, except if you actually look in that photo taken the other weekend, there is about half a dozen scooters there, giving proof to the fact that people certainly do use it as an access route to the terminal. Let's look at it from the pedestrian's point of view. Where's the remote? Where's this pointing to? Oh, it has sorted itself out. Okay, so let's look at sight lines. By my estimation, there's about 30 metres of sight line available on a good day. It is better for the motorist because they are out in the lane. The pedestrian's view is actually occluded by the fence. You see the rail and netting fence? The pedestrian is actually standing, if we look at the right-hand image, in the shadow. And this is a further issue you've got with this intersection. There is light and shadow, further confusing an already complex intersection picture. Not only is there the exit, there is the turn right from coming across the overbridge. Okay, so there's potentially traffic coming at you the other way. Now, according to Waka Kotahi's intersection design, crossing design, you should have a posted speed of 30 to 40 kilometres per hour here.
Peter, just to say your 5 minutes is up, but we've got a little bit of extra time, but just to let you know.
I think that this has been discussed, and I think you really need to see this. Here is the crossing itself.
One more minute. Thanks.
It is not engineered to standard. It is not in conformance with the relevant land transport rule, okay? If you look, we see the question marks. They're the crossing point, well, it's the assumed crossing point on the southern side. There is not an engineered space. There is not a way for wheels. If wheels came across from the terminal side, they would find themselves stranded. I'll take the extra time for the slide changing. Okay, so it doesn't conform to the land transport rules and crossing design standards. KiwiRail's website actually warns people not to walk to the ferry because of the crossing danger. They warn people not to walk to the ferry. They're thinking about a signalised intersection there by 2025, but the design's not certain and nor is the timing, and that's just going for urgent resource consent. You do not have a road safety audit of this uncontrolled pedestrian crossing here. I asked for it, you couldn't provide it. This is willful ignorance on your part. Making Thornton Quay Hart Road the preferred route does not affect your duty or liability to provide safety on Aotea Quay. Your work, good work, Thornton Quay Hart Road, will actually see more pedestrians venturing into this route. You're designing something to increase traffic through something that's already dangerous. Please don't put this roundabout into service without first having fixed up this mess. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. I'm glad we could get through the slideshow. No time for questions, I'm afraid. So next we've got Dale Scott from the Thornton Quay Hut Road Collective. You there, Dale? Online? No. Any idea where Dale might be? Well, there's a lot of time. It was 10 o'clock. They were notified that everything would. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, grab a cup of tea. The original had them at 10:05. Yeah, so we can't. I understand them services did tell them 5 minutes earlier. But
Sean, are we able to ask questions of the previous submitter if we've got time?
I was going to wonder about that, Peter. If you would like to come back and we can ask some questions of you while we wait for Dale if he's going to come or she's going to come. Councillor Pannett would like to ask a question.
Kia ora. Look, thank you for challenging us on this. I think that's incredibly helpful. So you're basically saying we should just stop everything and redo it?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you've got a dangerous pedestrian crossing. It's uncontrolled. There are issues of speed, sight lines, the nature of the crossing, its legality, the warning to motorists. There are some things which you could do which would mitigate some of the present risks and potentially allow you to get through without a death or serious injury until such time as that intersection is signalised as would appear to be KiwiRail's intent. But that's 3 years away, and you want to open this roundabout basically next month.
Okay, that's super helpful. So we'll ask questions of the officers when it comes to the paper. Thank you, and thank you for making this trying to make it a people-friendly place.
All you need to do is open up the land transport rule and the Wakakatahi crossing design book, and you'll make something work.
But Peter, can I ask a question? So, from what I can gather, the site is unsafe as it is.
Correct.
So this meeting we're discussing is the construction of a roundabout, which is some way away from where this dangerous crossing is. How is the roundabout? Is your submission more that we should be curing this problem at the same time as the roundabout, or are you saying the roundabout's causing this problem to be even worse?
Both. The specific point of the roundabout is to take traffic off ferry-bound traffic coming from the north off Hart Road. So it stays on the motorway, exits at Aotea Quay, comes to a new roundabout, does a U-turn, then exits to the ferry.
So we can expect more traffic, and that will exacerbate an existing problem.
And presumably you're doing a roundabout because it's got significant benefits. So there's also significant increases to the risks here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day?
You talked about the last minute lane changing, and I've definitely observed that, but you've observed it more because you've walked along that space. What do you see around that behaviour? Because it is a real challenge if people are worrying about that and not seeing the pedestrians.
So I suspect what's triggering the behaviour differs depending on the time of day, right? It could be someone who's just a casual ferry passenger, unfamiliar with that route. They suddenly realise, oh, I need to be in the left-hand lane, I need to make a safe change to the left. People forward and back, let them in, and then there's that rejuggling of speed and following distances there. I have actually driven around that bend and been concentrating on my rear vision mirror because I'm concerned that the person behind me is going to rear end me. And of course that's being negligent to what's in front of me, which is potentially a pedestrian trying to make a very quick decision to get across. Based on the current design rules, you would have to have a crossing speed of 4 metres a second as a pedestrian to make that crossing safely. And you want to put more traffic through there.
Yeah, I totally agree with your analysis of the moving left into that lane. For someone who doesn't go there all the time, it seems odd that the main route onto State Highway 1 is this kind of awkward sort of shuffling thing, and I've been caught out myself having to do a
And the
last
other
minute.
type of motorist will be the all too familiar commuter just trying to get a chance at and make those few extra car places, right?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Peter. Have we an update? Dale's no longer speaking, so I think on that basis we have finished our public participation. We'll move into general business. In accordance with Standing Order 19.1, I will be reordering the agenda items to be considered in the following order. So 2.1, Public Places Bylaw 2022. 2.5, let's get Wellington moving, the RT Key roundabout. 2.2 will then be the priority investment quarterly report, the forward program after that, actions tracking, and then we've got some work in public excluded. Do I need a motion on that? Or it's just my unilateral, just love those ones. Yeah. Okay, so moving to agenda item 2.1, the Public Places Bylaw 2002. Please welcome Shu Hang to introduce the report. Where's Shu? Shu, are you there?
Yep. My name is Shu Huang. I'm from the Strategy, Policy and Research team. Through the chair, the report seeks the committee's agreement to amendments to both Part 5, Public Places Bylaw, and Part 10, Verandas Bylaw of the Wellington City Consolidated Bylaw 2008, resulting from a review and updating process conducted from November 2021. We also seek your agreement to recommend the combined Public Places Bylaw 2022 for adoption. As the trigger to review the Verandas Bylaw is the statutory requirement to review it no later than 5 years after it was first adopted. The current Verandas Bylaw was last adopted in August 2015, and the Local Government Act allows a grace period of 2 years for review before the bylaw lapses. The review of the Verandas Bylaw corrects previous drafting errors, such as cross-referenced articles are non-existent. It also focused on making the bylaw easier to understand and comply. The trigger to update the Public Places Bylaw is the Council's Trade and the Events in Public Places policy, which came into effect in July. The Public Places Bylaw was made in 2018 and does not need to be reviewed until 2028, but it needs to be updated to support the implementation of the trades and the events in public places policy. So updating is mainly related to definitions relevant to the new policy and other clarification needs. Officers propose that both bylaws are removed from the Consolidated Bylaw and combined to a standalone Public Places Bylaw 2022. This is because both bylaws are concerned with the activities in public places and share common purposes and the enforcement measures. A standalone bylaw makes it easier to access, navigate, and understand. Overall, the proposed changes are mostly editorial and for improving readability. Officers expect that a full review of the Public Places Bylaw would be needed within the next couple of years due to the pending changes to relevant legislation, policy, and guidance, such as the Freedom Camping Act, District Plan, and the NZ Transport Agency guidance. Public consultation was undertaken between 25th March and 29th April. 9 submissions were received reflecting the fact that the proposed changes to the bylaws are minor and not significantly affecting the rights and obligations of the public. In addition to the proposed changes outlined in the report, as per the email by my colleague Kristen, we recommend a slight amendment to recommendation 2 of the report to include some further minor edits to the draft bylaw. This is to incorporate more feedback from submitters. Please see the tabled edits to be distributed by the Democracy Services. Officers are prepared to answer any questions and provide further information related to the report and the associated changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I just want to make a comment. Myself and Councillor Condi did get a copy of this yesterday, and I did glance through it, asked a couple of questions, but did think that they were, just editorial really, and responding to submitters. So I was comfortable with them. I apologise. I should have distributed it to all of you at the time, but I think I was in a. Yeah, that's this one here. Yeah, but I was comfortable, and perhaps Councillor Condi might have had a look, and she might support that. I don't know. Please, Jenny. Anyway, any questions? I think, Shu, we did have a submitter earlier here today, Mike Mello, who was asking about the nature of cycles and how they fit into the regime of micro-mobility. Were you here to listen to his concerns?
I might answer that through the chair. Yes, we did listen to that. In fact, Christine's on her way. She obviously hasn't arrived to to be in the room with you. One of the amendments which we circulated yesterday actually addresses the issue which they raised, which clarifies the definition around micromobility. So I think that we have taken that feedback on board.
She's not heard my question though, but yeah, I mean, would you like to comment on the issues that our public submitter raised earlier? Jeff was just saying that you're expected but haven't got here yet, but if you'd like to helpfully clarify, that'd be much well received.
Thank you. Sorry for my lateness. Yes, so micromobility, we defined it to align with the trading and events in public places policy, and it purely relates to clause 23.3D, which is to ride a device in a manner which causes a nuisance or damage to the public. To your point, Councillor Matthews, around why we wouldn't define pedestrians in that category is because obviously they're not considered a device riding type use of a device. So also to that point, you'll be aware the Accessible Streets package is coming soon, and with that some rules around device use and definitions. And so we haven't gone into more detail of those definitions until those rules take effect. And the other point around the fantastic point from Living Streets Aotearoa around the current clause read that they could be in effect used anywhere unless there was a sign. So we've taken on board their exact words, which I thought were brilliant, and changed that 23.3D to add in that they it's an offence to use a device where not permitted or where signage prohibits it. So we've just added in where not permitted.
Okay, Councillor Matthew, are you okay?
I just want to be entirely clear. I think we're on the same page. But so the reason that the definition of micromobility does not include mobility devices such as wheelchairs or mobility scooters is because they will be treated as pedestrians, and that is a difference in those using micromobility for transport or recreation purposes.
Exactly.
Thank you for that, Councillor Matthews. I'm very clear now too. Councillor Young.
I just have a question on page 33 about road and property identification. It's this vexed question of building numbers. So when I first stood for council, I campaigned for building numbers to be a requirement. They are already a bylaw, and they have been for time immemorial. But actually, and council went around and did a blitz on putting numbers on buildings, but there are still buildings like, I think Glasson's, that very big, the old Whitcoulls building in Lambton Quay, no number on that building. So it's not just that we use GPS to find buildings, but it's also in a state of emergency, you need to know what number the building is, and I just wonder how we can enforce it, because it's clearly not working.
It's a nightmare for a furniture remover. Yeah. I can tell you. Is that a question for officers?
Yes, how do we enforce it?
Would you like to revert on that?
We might need to seek out some advice from, I don't even know where in council does that numbering of businesses, numbering of buildings, so.
I can find it somewhere deep in my files. With a bit of notice, but it's so frustrating.
But we can look to enforce it if there was a decision. Are you looking to answer, Christine?
I was looking to Jeff to answer, but in terms of enforcement of this bylaw, we are restricted within the legislation on the enforcement measures we can take. But
restricted to what? A polite letter?
under the LGA, essentially. But we will need to seek the business unit's advice on how they do currently carry out enforcement. But just to reiterate, I'm not sure if Shu introduced the paper. Sorry. That I'm not sure if when Shu introduced the paper, he made it clear that this was just a very light review at this stage, and when there's certain pieces of legislation that are changing that are relevant to the bylaw, we will be doing a full review, so we can look into each and every clause.
Yeah, I can see it's frustrating. So I have another question, which is, so I just find my, sorry, because I'm electronically, here we are, not challenged, doing it. Page 35, it's about maintenance and repair of verandas. So we have a problem with that building on the corner of Ghuzney and Cuba Street, where the support for the veranda was right in the middle of the access to pedestrian crossing. So council wrapped pink foam around it, you know, which has disintegrated and looks incredibly tatty right now. How do we, it goes back to the time of David Chick. He said, well, we can't move the support. But, can we move the pedestrian crossing? Because it is incredibly stupid and a hazard to have a post, a major structural support for a veranda in the middle of a pedestrian crossing. What are we going to do?
More pink foam?
So,
It's not the colour, I take
look,
exception to.
through the chair, I'm not sure if there's an easy answer for that one. Obviously, that's a problem, and we need to find a way to address it. So, can we come back to you on that particular example, on how we can, what we can do about that one? On the original one, on building numbers, the bylaw gives us the power to put the building numbers in, particularly in private rights of way, so that we're the building is up against the road. So it gives us the power to do that. We'd have to come back. We'd have to go and talk to Michael Brownie and the team around that, and come back to you on how we can actually enforce that in areas where
the council did go around there. I think they bought massive numbers from Bunnings of stick-on numbers, but when number 35 loses its 3 and becomes 5, the idea was it was a temporary solution and the building owner would put up something decent, but they haven't. And Mr. Lawson, I look forward to hearing possible solutions to that veranda strut, because I can't think of one other than moving the crossing.
So, Councillor Young, we will look out the reasoning for putting the cover around it rather than moving the pedestrian crossing, because I suspect moving the pedestrian crossing will be extremely costly and probably difficult from a safety perspective, but we'll wind all that out so you get a reasoning for it. Okay.
Noted for the action tracker for the next infrastructure committee meeting. No, highly unlikely. The watchdog will always be here. The watchdog will always be here. Okay, we've exhausted questions. I think, is there a mover for the motion? I'm happy to move the motion. Seconder? Councillor Young. Any debate? We're all good. Right, a reply. Okay, I now put the motion which is moved and seconded, thanking officers for that, thanking public submitters as well. I put the motions, we moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1 and those against press 2, or the equivalent at home. Okay, and what's next? Yeah. We can do morning tea right now, right? Yeah. Okay. So thanks all. Declare that motion carried. Given it's 10:20 and there is tea break scheduled for 10:30, I think we'll take it now. 15 minutes. Yep, it's 15 minutes. Yep, so back at 25 to 11. Adjourned. to the meeting of the Infrastructure Committee. We'll be addressing item 2.5, which is the Let's Get Wellington Moving Te Key roundabout traffic resolution. So please welcome Siobhan Proctor to introduce the report.
Thank you, Sean. This traffic resolution relates to the installation of a roundabout on Aotea Quay. In essence, the traffic resolution gives effect to the decision made by Council in February 22 to approve the single-stage business case for Thornton Quay Hart Road, which is a Let's Get Wellington Moving project. The roundabout's the first part of that project. It needs to be built to enable a turning point area once the median strip on Hart Road is installed as part of the Thornton Quay Hart Road project. It's also going to serve to meet the increased demand from ferry traffic once the single-user ferry terminal is built, which is going to be built by 2025. Without the roundabout, it's estimated there'd be a 15% increase in traffic on Hart Road, and that's as a result of traffic trying to access the ferry terminal. So it's going to take a lot of that traffic off Hart Road. The traffic resolution was consulted on via our standard process. We received 115 responses to it, with 69% in support. And I've got Kylie Hook, who is our Principal Advisor for Let's Get Welly Moving, and I've also got Letty Page here, who's the 3-year Programme Director for Let's Get Welly Moving.
Will your officers here be saying some words or just,
just answer questions?
Okay, well, thanks very much, Ms Proctor. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to debate? Councillor Calvert. I see Councillor Pennant.
I just want to clarify something. You said this work needs to be done before the median strip has been put in on Hart Road. Has that been approved?
Yes, that was approved as part of the single-stage business case that you approved in February.
But wouldn't that have to be a traffic resolution following on from that?
Yeah, but essentially when you approved the single-stage business case, you approved the design, which was the proposed option for Thornton Quay Hart Road.
I'm not sure that people have sort of quite cottoned on to that, because a single, a business case is almost like we're going to go ahead and do the analysis and come back to you. So what I'm just saying is that I actually don't believe that people have got that understanding that that business case approved the median strip on the Hart Road.
So our standard process is that a business case is used to determine the scope, the time frame and the budget, and basically baselines that. So I think there was a question about baselining in the Q&As for the priority investment report that's coming up next. So that's our standard practice.
It might be standard practice, but I'm just worried that from a transparency and visibility perspective from all the users of that area, that we are we're setting a rod for our own back on this in that regard, because So you're So okay, all right. Thank you. That's helped me a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. We've got Councillor Pennant online.
Thank you, team, for all your work on this, and I'm really pleased, obviously, to see traffic being taken off Thornton Quay. However, my two questions are, is this really an attempt, though, to shift traffic around, because it means Aotea Quay is more congested? And I just wanted a response to submitters, because obviously I've found that very powerful, and just wondering if there was an amendment that we could add on to make some improvements for pedestrians. Kia ora.
Just to say on the amendment, there has been some discussion during the coffee break, and it's been sent out for you to have a look at.
Kia ora. Just to answer that, while we look at the two route options between Hart Road and State Highway, the idea is to create there will be efficiencies in terms of traffic time and for heavies that are going to travel to Aotea Quay. So in terms of using Thornton Quay and Hart Road, those delays will be sort of accruing through the corridor, given the lower speeds and the intersections that heavy traffic would otherwise go through. So there's some efficiencies in travel time for those vehicles, but in saying that, our aim is to have a safe corridor for everyone to use, regardless of where the location is. Yeah.
So does that mean then that pedestrians are given appropriate priority around Aotearoa?
So with Aotearoa, we've got pedestrian counts that we use for the corridor for our local roads. There's not a high count number of pedestrians that use this corridor. And saying that, it's not an excuse at all. We have used counts through the ferry terminal of pedestrians that travel to the ferry terminal. So it's around about 2%, the passenger numbers in the ferry terminal that catch the ferry, around about 600, so 12 people per ride. Greater Wellington Regional Council have given some stats on the numbers that travel from the bus stop on Thornton Quay across Aotearoa Bridge as well. So it's definitely highlighted that, in short, we need to monitor how this corridor is used by all modes, active including walking and cycling and scooters.
Thanks. So just last question, have you had any discussions about the amendment or should we just wait until it comes through and then we can ask more questions? Kia ora.
We'll pop it up now.
Sorry, can I just check with that, because that's different to what I thought, because this is now part of the substantive, so the amendments have now become part of the substantive, so we probably should ask our questions on those now. Would make sense? Is that okay? Can we ask questions on that?
It always makes sense to me, Councillor Day. What else would I say? Absolutely. So, Councillor Pannett, did you want to make that question again?
Yeah, sorry, what does 7 mean? Which shows the traffic flow around the city? Sorry, is that sort of a circular pattern where the traffic's going?
So that's that traffic plan that we've been talking about that Let's Get Welling Moving is working on, which is the circulation plan.
You mean Tam's thing about getting cars out of the CBD? Yeah, okay. That's maybe that could just be tidied up a little bit wording wise. So I guess when would you be coming back with the options around wayfinding signage? You know, like how long will that take? 3 months, 6 months, quicker?
Yeah, we can do that by the end of the year.
Okay, that's good. And number 5 as well, you could do that. Like, when could you do the pedestrian crossing?
Yeah, that could be end of the year as well.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Condi. Deputy Chair.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions to follow up from some of the answers in the Q&A, where we talked about the roundabout option 1 was the preferred option because it has the longest weave length from the State Highway 1 off-ramp. Can you explain to me what the longest weave length is, please?
Good point. When traffic weaving, I'm staying weave. So when you have multiple lanes coming together in a merging sense, one lane of traffic might prefer a particular lane. So it's that distance of understanding where drivers are engaged with their partners next to them to allow gap acceptance when travelling between the 2 lanes. So I guess in short, it's merge. That's the merging of the 2 vehicles together. Yeah, between 2 lanes. Yeah.
Right. So it gives the most kind of length for people who are coming off the Hart Road to move into the other lane, or people who are coming off the motorway to move into the other lane.
Correct. Yep. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to ask, there was also an answer about that there are cycle and pedestrian facilities on Northcote and Hart Road which are planned, which will connect to the existing ramp at the Aotearoa overbridge, providing off-road access to the ferry terminal. And I guess I'm wondering how far away are those and when are they likely to open?
So currently there is, on Aotearoa overbridge, there is a shared path currently going over Aotearoa Bridge. So it takes the net, I guess there's a natural slip going into the ferry terminal using the the concrete pavement area. So that's existing now. There's not a measure of how high a use it's going to be in terms of everyone starting to cycle and change to active modes. It doesn't feature in the bike network plan, but it's something that we are cognizant of with growth of cycling and walking going, throughout Wellington. We know that people will start changing their modes. So it is a measure that we'll be monitoring. Thanks.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Free.
Yeah, thank you. This is all good stuff, I think. Just to follow up on Councillor Calvert's question, would we normally need a traffic resolution for the median? Normally we get them for parking, but would we normally be doing that?
No.
Sorry, we didn't hear that answer online.
It's because I turned it off instead of on. So I've just been advised that we wouldn't need a traffic resolution for that.
Yeah, that was what I thought, but I just wanted to be totally clear. Could somebody briefly, I think we have had a really strong case that there's a need for some fairly swift improvements to the pedestrian crossing or pedestrian crossing point. I don't think it's actually a pedestrian crossing. What things could be considered? Sorry.
So we have to investigate that, Deputy Mayor, so we can bring those options. Well, we'll have to do that options analysis and then we'll implement something, but I don't want to speculate now on what we could potentially do.
I guess I'm wondering if we do need to look at the speed issue rather than leave it to be bundled up with what might happen with the speed review paper, whether we could be a bit more forceful about saying it's a priority and needs to be done. Done.
Yes.
Yeah, is that a possibility?
So I guess my concern here is just around workload and resource. We've got a plan for the speed management plan and then how we roll that out. So that is going to be a measured process, and there are lots of parts of the city where I think it's probably high priority areas that we need to deal to. So for us, it's around prioritisation and making sure that we do follow a measured plan for this, because it puts the speed management plan at risk if we pick off areas one by one.
There was a mention that some of it's 60 or even 70 kilometres an hour. Is that where the crossing is, or is that going to be part of what's at least at 50 kilometres an hour?
Kia ora. So the current speed limit there is on Aotiki is 70. We'll be looking at the design of the roundabout is for 50, so we're looking at reviewing how that speed is managed through the roundabout system, and also to enable some of the weaving and merging aspects from Hart Road to State and Aotiki off-ramp. We'll be looking at how those speeds are managed through that Aotiki crossing.
Thank you. Also, the issue of the lighting and the shadows was raised. Is there anything we can do about that, where people are crossing?
Yeah, that would have to be part of the investigation that we need to do. Yeah, it's definitely differences in lighting and shading points underneath Aotiki overbridge.
Okay, all right, but it's going to be part of the package. You wouldn't want to just have a look at that separately.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And the other question is, and maybe forgive me if I should know this, but there was mention of the Petone to Naurunga cycleway walkway, that big project. I take it that there's a plan for how that's going to integrate with all of this work.
Yeah, so that's part of the Thornton Hart Road, is that connection piece between the end of Hart Road and the beginning of Te Ara Tarapua.
Yeah, I just wanted to be totally reassured. Thank you. That's all from me.
I think it's the Mayor.
Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Foon.
Oh, okay, don't mind. Way go.
Kia ora, I've got 3 questions. Do you mind if I rattle them off? So I did ask in the Q&A, why are we being taken to court on the Thornton and Hart Road and by whom? So I'd like an update there. What are the next stages of engagement opportunities and the timeline for Thornton Hart Road for businesses to engage on that? And just want to check do we have a process in place that checks the ongoing impacts of the changes that we make? So, for example, this one that's been brought up about the pedestrian impacts, so that we've got a checking point for this going forward? So a holistic view when we make the changes.
I'll do number 1 if you do number 2, 3. Right, number 1. Okay, so yes, there is a judicial review underway by Thornton Quay Collective, which is a number of businesses on Thornton Quay. The claim is around insufficient options were considered, their perspectives were ignored, and the decision was not based on sound data. So I think the latest is the first hearing of that is in September. Yeah, and that's about as much as we can tell you at this point. Is that okay?
Is there anything online about it? I couldn't find anything.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Other 2 questions.
Kia ora. With regards to the second question on engagement opportunities, right now we're planning for the next engagement opportunity to take place in November, and that's going to be in line with consultation period for traffic resolution to be brought forward for the rest of the project. And that traffic resolution will probably come early next year, but we want to take the opportunity to do that engagement piece before everyone goes off for their summer holidays. So. Mm-hmm.
Kia ora, one more. With Aotiki Roundabout and a lot of these projects that get put in of a large scale, there'll be a monitoring plan. So that'll bring up and highlight areas that are of concern and need to be measured. I've yet to talk to Brad about that, but anyway, so with each monitoring plan, it highlights those risks and measures that we need to do, for example, pedestrian growth, cycle network, and how people move through the corridor. So they'll be done at stages so we can monitor how people use the corridor, regardless of where it is. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Did you want one more, Councillor Foon?
4 questions now, please. Yes, just a follow-on question regarding engagement. Can I just check what our engagement plan is to notify businesses? Just in terms of, are we going door to door? Are we emailing? How are we engaging with them to come and engage on this project?
Kia ora. I'm Hazel Dobie. I'm the portfolio lead for Thornton Quay, Hart Road and Golden Mile as well. Pardon me. So we're just working through the engagement plan at the moment, but there'll be a period where we're talking one-to-one with businesses and all small groups to have that opportunity to get that feedback. That's one of the learnings from Golden Mile, is that those small group engagements really worked well. We've got a really good quality of input. So while we're planning that, also making sure we have a really good, strong database as well. So there'll be one-to-one and group meetings, and also followed, and then also a public engagement process as well. We use a multi-channel approach. We can't assume everyone wants to work in the same way, and so there will be the opportunity to provide feedback online using Social Pinpoint, which was incredibly successful for Golden Mile, but also in those group meetings, drop-in sessions, Facebook sessions, and email, and looking towards a submission form as well that people can do handwritten or phone us or email. We just try and keep that barrier really low so that people can engage as well. But we will be really mindful of the community there as well.
Awesome. Right. I have Councillor Day, then Mayor Foster, then Councillor Fitzsimons, and then I've got a couple of questions. I'd like to wrap it up then.
Cool.
So, Councillor Day.
My question's really around actually one of the amendments, number 4, because our public participant this morning, Mike, was quite clear that people do tend to try and pick the shortest route to walk, which makes sense because often you're trying to connect with something or you just feel you're in a hurry. So obviously the wayfinding signage is helpful to give people that connection, but I'm just wondering, because a lot of people will go straight to their phones and Google, which is the walking route and that sort of thing. How much can we influence Google searches, but also, I guess, the communication with the Inter-Islander, because actually people will go there, and if they had a good description of what your walking route will be like, then actually if you've got luggage or whatever, you might go, actually I'd rather go the shorter way or I'd rather go the longer way because it's going to be a smoother walk or whatever. But I guess just wanting to understand how we can do that, because I think encouraging people to, like, the signage needs to be well done, and how would we do that?
Okay.
I don't know about Google, but we can look into that. But definitely in terms of the Inter-Islander, so as you heard, we know that they already discourage people using the Aotearoa, but we can engage with them just to make sure that they have pedestrian maps available.
Yeah, because it's almost saying if you do choose to walk Lambton Aotearoa, this is what we recommend and this is what you'll experience. You know, like actually there are some spaces where it's tricky at the moment, whatever. I don't know, just helping people prepare can be helpful.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of accessibility, the needs for total accessibility is there, regardless of the journey. So it's about that journey from A to B and having no severance in general. But in saying that, I know Waikukotahi do feed into the Google as well, so whether that can be changed. And we do have, I think there's a connection there with our Greater Wellington friends as well about where those wayfinding points could be in terms of what they set up as well. So I'm not sure I'm answering it, but yeah. So.
I mean, obviously the ideal is to have that being a good one as well, but while it's not, I think we need to support our people to be able to move around in a safe way.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Mayor Foster, then Councillor Fitzsimons.
Yeah, look, two questions. First one of them, in the report 20.23, there is the comment that's made, page 88, comments made there about if the effects of the roundabout and larger ferries will result in 13% increase on traffic on SH1, and if we don't approve, it'll result in 15% in traffic on Hart Road. Those, I presume, are across the day, are they? Or are they, because there'll clearly be quite intense increases in traffic volume when ferries are particularly have just arrived and people are getting off them.
Yeah, so those numbers are actually on from the peak period when ferries do come in. At the moment, the ferries being at 670 odd passengers, and they'll be moving to a new passenger capacity of 1,900. So in terms of those people that drive or use commercial vehicles from the ferry terminal, it'll be a considerable increase at peak when they offload and reload. Those ferry timings for the new ferry, at the moment they're looking at afternoon peak arrival. So that's a considerable problem when you look at our network and afternoon peak. So we need to get better at it, mitigate what's about to happen.
So just to be clear, are you saying that if we've got 1,000 vehicles an hour at the moment, that with the new ferries, at the time those ferries are discharging their passengers and vehicles, it will be 1,150, so it's only 15% increase. I know that's significant, but it's not like it's a doubling or anything of that nature.
Purely at peak period, we're going to be mitigating those traffic congestion moments. So regardless of whether we have it's in our peak period or their arrival times for ferry, we have a larger benefit of diverting traffic onto State Highway for our local road.
I understand that. I'm just trying to get. I'm sorry. My question's not clear, but the answer is certainly not clear to me. What I'm trying to get is a feel for how much extra traffic there will be from the ferries, full stop. And is that what we're saying? It's 15%, and that's all it is.
There's an average. There's a percentile that the ferries are at peak capacity. That's at summertime period. Then it drops down, but it's a variance of 15%.
Okay.
It goes in peaks and troughs based on patronage for the ferry terminal.
Okay. Right. Okay, and look, the other question is just following up from Councillor Calvert's question, and I think the Deputy Mayor's question is around the median barrier on Thornton Quay, and I know that's, at Hart Road now, and I know that's not the main focus of this, but you've answered some questions there already. There were certainly concerns raised about that in the previous debates about it, and the need for people to drive right the way from one end of the roading system to another. They've got to turn into the other side. I thought you would at the very least be looking at that. What sort of looking at that have you done as a result of those discussions in terms of what you bring back?
So you're correct. So through the detailed design process, we're looking for opportunities to provide smaller vehicle turning areas. So that's still a work in progress.
Good. No, that will be very, very useful, because that's the kind of thing which we do want to see, and it's material to people's ability to access or get out of properties.
Okay, Councillor Fitzsimons.
Yeah, I think many of us found the public participants in these submissions quite compelling, and it's great to see some amendments up there to address some of the issues they raise. But I'm just wondering how they will know how that work's done. So can it be reported back to council or provided on our website, or can we make some obvious way, and maybe included in the traffic circulation report, whatever it is? I'd just like them to see the impact of the points they made.
Yeah, really good point. So we are going to be publishing our minor works program, so this would fall into that minor works program, so we'll schedule it in there so that they can see that reported back, and it will be on our website.
Is it coming here?
No, it'll be published on our website, so just in terms of how we come up with the minor works plan, and then just so that we can track progress through the year.
Okay, just from me, have we sort of got the right people in the same room when we're talking about this project? And I'm guessing Let's Get Wellington Moving has, but it seems to me that walkers, cyclists are likely a very, very important part of the ferry's sort of network, and could be part of our bike network, going over to Picton for a day or two with the bikes and so forth. I'm just wondering if those conversations have been had, and whether any thought's been given to the likes of Centreport, who own some land that could actually facilitate a lot of what we want. Have we spoken to these organisations that own land which is not particularly productive, which could actually allow walkers and cyclists to use the other side of Aotearoa?
So I am aware that there are conversations ongoing with all the directly affected property owners and the adjacent property owners. I'm not clear on the extent of whether there's conversations about cycling access and stuff like that, but I can follow up and find out.
Yeah. Just seems we want the waterfront to be a spectacular bit, and we're making everyone sit on the other side of the road and to access, and that's giving us this bottleneck at this crossing. So anyway, that's all I had. So no other questions. So
I just wanted to add a clarification about the engagement part. We're doing some early engagement with directly affected asset owners and property owners around there in September, and then in October we're going to talk to businesses on Thornton Quay ahead of the public consultation in November. So just want to clarify that.
One more question, Councillor Day.
Yeah, just to follow up from what you've asked, Chair. So you're talking about the seaward side of Aotearoa Quay. I thought we'd asked that question before, and it's quite a productive piece of land. Like there's a lot going on in there, and it's got a lot of movement of big vehicles. So I don't know, but I was under the impression that was kind of never going to be while it's an operating port, it's never going to be a zone you can. But I don't know. I'd be interested to know.
We have had quite clear indications from Centreport that they wouldn't want us to use that land, given the nature of their operations, and similar to the Thornton Quay Cycleway, where there was a suggestion that we use the Kiwi rail land by the rail corridor again, very problematic in terms of using those pieces of land.
All right, okay, thanks. All right, so no other questions. Thanks everybody for good questions, and thanks very much to officers for helping us out. Is there a mover for the motion? The amended substantive? Well, I'm happy to make the to move it. So sorry. Okay, who's waving behind me? Okay, All right. The Mayor, would you like to move then?
Look, I'd be delighted to. I think Councillor Condi and my hands went up in a jiffy on that one. So I'm delighted to move this, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I think there have been a lot of people who have been sort of talking about Let's Get Wellington moving and Let's Get Wellington moving actually delivering things on the ground. I think in a year's time, 2 years' time, there'll be people saying there are too many orange cones and too much work being done, and can you please slow down? But that's where we're at the moment. A huge amount of work's being done to get us to the position that we are at now. And this is, there's been a number of different smaller projects that have been happening, the pedestrian improvements, and things like, for example, the speed limits in the central city were part of the Let's Get Wellington moving package. But this is the first sort of, if you like, major piece of roading work. It's a modest piece of roading work, but it's still important in what it does. And I think we've got to recognise that these ferries are coming. They've been ordered. They are big. They will take, as you've heard, a lot more people, and they will, connect the North Island, the South Island much better together. And it gives us the opportunity of having a much better gateway into the North Island, into Wellington City from the ferries. But we need to be able to make sure that we can, as best possible, handle that extra traffic that comes out of the ferries, both freight and private vehicles. And this is what this initiative is all about. I suspect, I don't suspect, but I think there's very, very likely there'll need to be more investment in connecting the ferry terminal as it develops, or the ferry site as it develops, particularly if Blue Bridge goes there as well in the future. But for now, this is a very pragmatic, sensible investment to make, and it is, I think, is going to be a critical part of supporting the connection of our city with our friends across the water in the South Island. So I'm delighted to move, and thanks everybody for all the hard work that's gone into getting us to this point.
Councillor Condi, would you like to speak now?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this, and just want to acknowledge, as other people did during the questions, the really great submissions we had from people who came in today to talk to us about some of the challenges around pedestrian access via Aotearoa to the ferry terminal, and the amendments that are there and down in the substantive, thanks to the officers who worked those up, so that we can see that there will be some work done looking at the safety of that crossing point and what we might be able to do to improve it, as well as trying to improve the wayfinding for an alternative, safer walking route. I think this is a great project to be getting off the ground. It's going to be a really important thing for us to be able to move forward on the improvements on Hart Road, where when we did a safety audit there, we found that actually one of the most significant safety issues was traffic turning across those lanes. And that's when we were looking at all of the options about the different things that we might do along there, none of them were creating safety concerns as significant as the safety concerns that are already there in that area. So we need to work really effectively with the businesses along there about how we're going to make that work. And it's great to see officers thinking about creating space for turning areas for smaller vehicles, so that they don't have to travel so far. But for some of those if there's really big trucks coming along there, they will need to make use of this roundabout to be able to get around, so that we can really improve the safety for all the users along Hart Road. So I'm really happy to second this. Thank you.
Okay, any speakers? Councillor Fu.
Kia ora, and thanks to everyone for the work on this and for the submitters this morning. I thank you for taking the amendment number 7 into this substantive. I think that this is coming about because I am concerned to hear about this heavier traffic flow coming from Aotearoa. While I appreciate that it's being diverted off through the roundabout, it still does mean that if we're making the local road, this will become a heavier flow into the city. And so I really want to understand what that traffic flow looks like, and the weightings, like how intense will that traffic flow into the city be. And I'm concerned about our mass rapid transit on the quays and the heightened pedestrians. So I just can't see how they're mixing. So I'll be looking forward to that report coming through, which officers have said will be able to come through in the early triennium. Just around the area, yes, speed is an issue, so I'm really looking forward to seeing a change there, and also the wayfinding. As a Wellingtonian, I've also found it difficult to get on the ferry driving, let alone walking. So really pleased to see that this has been highlighted. But actually, I think where I thank the submitters this morning, Wellington, New Zealand has got our tourism destination plan is pitching us as a zero carbon city. And as a traveller, I know that you walk, when you arrive from somewhere in the ferry into the city. And I think that is on us to make sure that we match that plan, we work with Kiwi Rail and get that wayfinding really good so that people that do want to travel that way as a commitment to their lifestyle can do so easily and safely. So thank you for the work on that. The engagement plan, I just want to really thank the team on Let's Get Welly Moving for the increased engagement, particularly with the business community. And I really want to urge you to just keep up that good mahi on this particular end. I do believe that, it would be possible we wouldn't be in court if we'd really have gone hard and connected with the business community and involved them in these discussions. And yes, I do want to highlight that through this process, are there just checking our checks and balances to make sure that when there are knock-on effects of the decisions we make for other users, and that we've got a checking process for that, not a post process, as in I'd like to see it ahead of. That would be all from me. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foon. Deputy Mayor Free.
Yeah, thank you. And there we go. I've managed to turn myself off when I turn my sound on. I just want to really echo the comments from Mayor Foster and Councillor Condi, because as a member of the governance reference group for Let's Get Welly Moving, we have spent a huge amount of time and effort on doing the hard yards that you don't see, and it's getting exciting to actually see some of the stuff emerging, like coming out at the end of a sausage machine or something. It's suddenly starting to emerge into reality. And yes, the speed limits in the CBD, the pedestrian improvements, the Cobham crossing, which I've always said I really support that. I think it's going to be amazing for just livability in our suburb. And also, as Councillor Condi said, the improvements, the safety improvements, which will result to the Hart Road Cycleway, because when we designed that cycleway, it didn't have the Waitomo fuel station there. And that actually in its own right has made it less safe than it should be. So this is a good way to address some of the safety issues. I think for me, the learnings out of this has been their pedestrian experience. And I'm looking forward to, these bigger projects are shining the light on some of the deficiencies which have always been there, but making it more imperative that we actually do something about them. So I would love to see that sort of less than ideal urban environment where the pedestrians cross actually been turned into something brighter, more cheerful, better lighting, some planting, some colour maybe. Let's make that pedestrian experience something that people actually want to do. And it's really obvious that we're inviting them to go on a walking journey to get into our city, and there's a lot to be gained, rather than it being probably a pretty less than ideal experience. Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I will be supporting this because I think even just having a roundabout there, regardless of what happens to the design on Hart Road, is going to be useful. I'm pleased to hear that we're going to sort of look at how we engage with businesses, because too often not, we've heard from businesses around this table, they said you haven't engaged with us fully, and we've still proceeded with the decisions that we've had, and we've ended up in court. So I think it's going to be imperative that you are engaging with businesses, and engaging doesn't mean talking to them, it also means listening. And because, again, that's why we end up in court, we don't listen to people. What I'm also, but I still get a sense that a lot of this is still piecemeal. It's not, we don't have this master plan. We might have a master plan from a transit perspective, but we're certainly not have a master plan from how we want to see our city working and the business community. You know, the Hart Road, Thornton Quay, how are those? How does that work? How does that work for the locals? How does it work for those businesses? So we really need to be more people orientated in our planning, and we really need to be a bit more master planning, because if we'd actually done proper master planning, there wouldn't have been a petrol station potentially there when we've just put in a brand new cycleway and pedestrian way. So we really need to think of all the bits that make up a city, not just the roads or even the cycleways. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll just say a couple of words. Firstly, I agree with Councillor Calvert. I think the location of the roundabout makes sense. It's quite an awkward place to have traffic lights, and certainly I would expect that the trucking companies will welcome a roundabout where facilitates in and out of their depot anyway. I guess one thing that's been missing from the debate is the any discussion on the increase in traffic, the increase in these ferries and how that aligns with our zero carbon stuff. It's surprising that some of my colleagues haven't pulled up on that, but I'm guessing, sorry? Yeah. Anyway, but I know that the Let's Get Wellington Moving team have run all those sort of numbers, so I'm happy to support. And if no one else is wanting to say anything, I'll now put the motion, which has been moved. Sorry. Oh, right, a reply. Your Worship, maybe you could address that issue I just raised. He's gone. Okay. What do I?
He's in the meeting, but it just the person who.
Shall I ring him?
Having seconded it, I could take over moving the motion.
I mean, I'm happy to move it on behalf of. I'm happy to move it, and Councillor Condi, I believe you're second. I don't need a right reply. Let's vote. I moved, and Jenny, yep. And more formally, those in favour, please press 1. Those against, please press 2. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Condi. Deputy Mayor?
I'm a yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, that's been carried unanimously. Okay, moving on to the agenda item, which was 2.2, the Priority Investment Quarterly Report. Please welcome Siobhan Proctor to introduce the report.
Okay, I'm very pleased to be able to introduce this report. I think this is the third time this has come to this committee, noting that we've got 19 projects on it. We've added 3 projects, taken 3 projects off, and we have a number of project managers and business owners online to answer any questions you may have about specific projects. I'm assuming we've got Andrew Cowie online, who's our PMO manager. Is he online?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew runs our project management office, so they are the office responsible for collating and putting this report together. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions, folks? I've got a couple. Frank's Park, what's happened with the Whale Mali proposal, and where does that fit in at all? Is there a status update as to where that's got to?
Is Phil, are you online? It's the difficulty of trying to do this online. No, obviously not. I can get an update from the business owner on that for you.
I can answer that. Sorry, I'm just moving and coordinating tech. Chair, could you repeat the question, please? I just missed the question.
I was just wondering where the Whale Maile project was up to and how far or progressed that was, and is it ready to be integrated into our development project?
We've just picked up some discussion with the Whale Maile Trust to feed into the broader work that's going on around the redevelopment plan. We'll be bringing back a proposal to councillors scheduled for February, March next year, and that will be basically a broad business case on the redevelopment of the plan to address the car park building, the Whale Maile, and including the progress that they've made on their proposal.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Calvert?
Yeah, I'm just interested in the Tanako program and the Central Library, and given that we recently heard that the Office of the Auditor General is looking into procurement practices, and I know some of us shared some of those concerns last year, but I don't see it there as a risk, and just wondering, is that going to impact on this piece of work?
So in short, no, we don't see that as a risk to the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Foon?
I tried to say I wasn't ready, so I'm going to do it from memory. There in the Q&A, there is a question regarding the sludge program, or the new the wastewater treatment plant, and it says something about we've got enough for 10 years. So I just want to clarify which decade are we meaning with that?
So that was in relation to that issue that came up a few months ago, where we had a question about the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. So we initiated a review of that. That analysis has just been conducted. We're just waiting for the final report, but the early indications are that there is sufficient capacity in that plant of another 10 years before we need to put another train on. So the plant's been designed to add more capacity, but it was about the timing of when we needed that addition. No, so
I thought it was the new one, and we need more than 10 years out of it.
Councillor Condi.
Thank you. I have a question about Te Matapihi. Again, this is something following up from the Q&A. There was a question asking about why the scope of Te Matapihi was amber, and then the answer came back that it was to do with cost uncertainty. And I didn't quite understand that, because I thought if there's a cost uncertainty, then surely the cost would be amber. I don't understand why the scope is amber.
Sorry, I'm just waiting to see if anyone hops in on this, if we've got a project manager or business owner for Te Matapihi online. No. Can I get back to you on that, Jenny?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, I've got a question on the Newtown Cycleway, and relates to the signalling phasing changes, I think, which are resulting from changing the bike lane heading south. And I'm just sort of wondering, what does the signalling phasing mean? Does that mean there will be a separate set of lights for cycles?
Answer that. I'm sure everyone knows Stephen Hart.
Hi, Stephen.
The signal changes that they're looking at there made some signal changes to various intersections along that route in the pre-implementation work. So we've made changes to the Hospital Road intersection, Drummond Street intersection, which is opposite the Blind Foundation, also to John Street, and they're all to enable the cycleway to go through and be able to coordinate with the traffic. And there is a proposal to change the signals at Ridderford Street, Mean Street, because that intersection's not working as well as it might do, but that's subject to the traffic resolution that'll go through the committee on the 8th or the middle of September.
Okay, so it was the Main Street and Ridderford that I was getting at. So what I'm hearing is that the different sets of lights in that area will be coordinated to get an optimal outcome. Is that what you mean by signalling phasing?
No, those signals are already coordinated. They run as a sequenced program set of signals through there. But the changes are to that set of signals as to there's a weave between the cycles coming out into the traffic lane or beside the through lane, and then you've got the left turn traffic that goes from Ridderford Street into Main Street crossing. That doesn't particularly work for either cyclists or motorists. And so the idea there is to simplify that intersection and the way it's controlled to bring the cyclists up through the inside, give them a early advance through that signal to continue up Ridderford Street. So that would take that confusion out of there.
Yeah.
But we've kept the arrangement that we've got in place until it's been through the traffic resolution.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. One for you, I think, Siobhan. So we've had there's been a bit of press about the forgiveness of the parking tickets, and some people are upset about that, and others are not. And I'm just wondering if you want to give a bit of a summary about why you felt that we were, why we should waive these, quite a big source of revenue, I suppose, and what are the lessons learned, if any?
So this was a trial using a traffic management plan. We felt that it was only fair to rescind these tickets and to refund the money for them, given the fact that we are reverting to a normal traffic resolution process on this now.
Okay, thanks very much. We have, oh God, it's one of the, Mayor Foster, that's what's happened in this training.
Okay, the first question is just Island Bay Parade. That looks pretty minor. I think you circulated something to us before, just the works that need to be done there. It's very small dollars. Is that what we're talking about there, Siobhan?
Just to do the fix-up of the ceiling. Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, cool. No, good. Thank you. Second one, just on Frankie's Park, the work that's being done, it's probably a Phil question, is in terms of the business case, I'm really interested to see what the costs are of retention versus demolition of the car parking building and then rebuilding a park or rebuilding part of a park, and how those things play together. So obviously it's going to take some while to work through that, but how are we going?
Through the chair, yes, look, it is taking a while. We've had some initial figures provided to us, but look, we're a way off yet before being able to land any definitive direction, and so hence I'm being careful and bounding my ability to provide a timeline when we come back, and that's where we're still on schedule for February next year.
Okay, cool. And I'd just like to understand a little bit more about Tanaka Civic Square and the timeframes for the demo of CAB, and also the process that we go through for then talking with the community about what replaces CAB and in all probability MOB and the Capital E building and those other sites. So there's a lot of space in Tanaka Civic Square that obviously has got a future which needs to be determined.
I don't think we've got anyone online to talk about Tanaka, but I can tell you from what I know about it. So the demolition is part of a wider program of Tinako. So that wider program is still under development in terms of what our plans are for that general area, City to Sea Bridge, Jack Islet Green, etc. So that's still under development. So we're really focusing the efforts on the demolition at the moment, and then with that pathway leading into the development for there is the development for what goes on to that site once we've demolished CAB and MOB. In terms of the community, we can come back to you in terms of what the timing is, so that's all planned in the project plan.
So are we doing these things in parallel? Because it feels there's a degree of doing things sequentially. I mean, we can certainly do the conversation with the community while we're doing the demo work, for example, or planning the demo work.
Yeah, it's a good point in terms of the engagement plan that needs to be associated, but it's said because the program is still in development, we want to have a really good view of what's happening when, and then we can go and sort of present that as a whole program rather than just focusing on the piecemeal projects within the program. But I take your point, and we'll just make sure that we probably have a look at that engagement plan and maybe put something in the next report so that you've got some visibility of that.
Yeah, look, I think that'd be good because, I mean, clearly having a long period of time which there's work being done, to be done, etc. The quicker we can get that done, the better, and the better for the surrounding parts of the city as well, which are obviously going to be a bit blighted for some period of time while construction's going on.
Yeah, good point. I've got it down.
Thank you. And look, the final one is just around Te Matapihi. So we've got, again, the timetable there. We've got the detailed design. Can you just fill me in exactly the detailed design time and also actually having people with more doing further physical works? I mean, obviously the strip out's being done, but doing further physical works. Even if it's setting things up, what's our time frame there?
James Robertson has come down to answer about Te Matapihi.
Marina, Andy, can you just be a little bit more specific about what you're asking there?
Well, it's the two bits that I understand it to be the next key bits. One is obviously we're going through develop design to detailed design. So it's the time frame to get through that detailed to the completion detailed design, which looks like it's mid next year. I thought it was a little earlier than that, but if you can clarify that. And secondly, the actual having contractors on site doing physical works, so people can actually see that physical progress. And obviously, as I said, we've had the internal strip out being done already, but the next bit, physical works.
Sure. So there's work that will continue through. Probably the most visible aspect of the work will be just in the new year when the tower crane is put up through the middle of the building. So there's a lot of work to do before that to prepare for that, but that will see a big crane on the skyline above that building in February. That's the time frame for that. The developed design and detailed design are basically being progressed along the lines of the separable portions for the contracting of the construction. So there are 5 phases or 5 elements to those separable portions, and both designs are following along those phases. So that's why you see that stepping out a little bit into next year.
So what you're saying is that there'll be different bits of the design which have reached their detailed design having been done, and they'll be phased, and therefore we will be into construction before all the detailed design is complete.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right,
it is
yes.
parallel.
Exactly
Yeah, no,
right.
that's good. Okay, so the work that needs to be done before the tower goes in, so that becomes visible earlier than that, presumably.
Yeah, tower crane should be, I think it's February 23, the time frame on that one.
Yeah. Okay, no, good stuff. So letting contracts then?
So they're done by the separable portion. So I think the separable portion 1A and B, which is quite a fundamental one, it's foundational, is we are going. The tender's closed. We're going through discussions now with the parties and looking at these things called tags, right? Which is basically where the respondee is said. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's what we're doing at the moment, and the intent is to have that done, that contract signed early September, so literally in the next week or two.
Fantastic. Good work. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of questions. One was about Ngaio Gorge, page 61. Just wondering if, because obviously this was written before there were massive weather issues, and has that caused an issue at all with that program?
Yet to be determined.
Yeah, it might be. And then just Frank Hitz Park Playground. I imagine it's red because it's got significantly delayed. But just wondering, have we secured all the equipment and things? So, like where are the risks as far as, delays going forward now?
Chair, so the risks that sit with this project really are with the new contractor satisfying themselves that the subcontractors and the material supplies are secured such that they can then pass that level of risk onto us in a pricing structure and schedule. So it's to the extent they can at the moment, they've contained the various potential risks. We're happy that there's a good process in place now that those risks are being managed, and we'll end of this month, early next, we will be in a position to confirm the various pieces of documentation, like basically enter into a binding contract.
Yay, thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing on this. It is really appreciated by the young people of Wellington.
And not so young. Get that slide back. Councillor Condi.
Thank you. Just with James in the room, is it all right if I come back to my question about why the scope of Te Matapihi is amber?
Absolutely. I was going to bring it back myself. Yeah.
Thank you. I have further questions, but let's start there.
Sure. So the scope, to be honest with you, as the chair of the project board, I debated this with the project team. My personal view is that it's quite a conservative view of the status of scope. However, I went along with the majority perspective and we made it amber. And the reasons are that there are some risks around the costs of materials and constructions, etc. And there are still some aspects of the building that we are getting down to, I guess, the fine print of work that needs doing and therefore costs that may be incurred on some of those items, and particularly around the roof and the facade. So I guess my point is that we at this point, for all the information we have, we believe we can contain that within the envelope that we have. So from my perspective, that would be green. However, the PMO and my colleagues feel that we should make it transparent, that there is an element of risk around that.
Thanks. So I guess just trying to understand the concern about why cost uncertainty comes under scope rather than cost uncertainty coming under cost being amber. Is it the fact that greater scope of some of these things, we've got ambitions to have greater scope in some elements, but we may not be able to afford it within the budget that we've set? Or can you just clarify that a bit?
Sure. So I can probably give you an example. So if we're looking at, as you strip the building back, you look at the condition of some of the elements of the building. So, for example, like the facade or the roof. And then within, when making that kind of assessment, then there's usually options of what you do, which could be a piece of remedial work that potentially lasts for 10 years or a piece of remedial work that potentially could last a lot longer. And that obviously has a different price. So it's a matter of like drilling into and understanding what's going on with some of these areas that need remediation. And just for clarification, there's not much, okay? So it's not like there's a bunch of unknowns going on, it's not that. And then understanding what are the various different strategies that could be applied to that remediation. And obviously they've got different costs. And then it's looking at the entire project and thinking about how does that therefore fit into the envelope that we've got, given the other risks and contingencies that we need to cater for.
Thanks, James. And can I also just ask about the scope changes or the effect of having, pardon me, all the maker spaces and the cool spaces that we're working on with capital E? Is that within scope of the original decision, or have we kind of pushed the envelope on the scope there?
So I think as we've looked at the building and considered the initial, vision and aspiration that council resolved to put in place when the decisions was made, there's again, there's various options of how you go about doing that. Some of those have more cost implication than others. So what we're trying to do at the moment is work within, within the scope that we've got, which includes the cost of the entire project. So trying to do as good a job as possible within the finances available is, I guess, what we're trying to do, and there's options within that. So we are constantly considering during the design process how to design the various different elements, including the capital E requirements, whether that fits within the scope, the envelope, and the aspirations for the building. And what some of the different options would mean in terms of outcome as well, and weighing all that up, I guess.
Thanks, James. That's helpful just to understand how that process is kind of iterative and how it goes on. I just wanted to follow up about the Miramar cutting project. When Mike Miller was here this morning, he raised concerns about the Miramar cutting project being closed because in his view, it hasn't actually implemented the traffic resolution as it was approved. Can we get some response to that, please?
Yes, that change came after the concept. So what happened was at the concept, the design stage, you go for the traffic resolution. So the intent was to separate cyclists from pedestrians and have separate paths for them. But as we worked through the detailed design, that wasn't going to work because there's a lot of conflict between the pedestrians and cyclists in that area and pedestrians going to the bus stop in that area. So it's decided that it was better to construct it as a shared space, and that's something that we're going to monitor. And if we find that shared space does work better than the separated space, then we'll come back to committee with a resolution to change it to shared space rather than the traffic resolution that sits on the table at the moment, creating two separate spaces in that area.
Thanks. So is the challenge there that you've basically got pedestrians and cyclists kind of weaving between to go different directions, and that's why you've decided a shared space might work better?
That's right, because you've got conflict between people wanting to cross the road and people going to the bus stop and all the various movements that are happening in that area.
Okay, well, we look forward to hearing back about how that's going. I also just had a very quick question about the Island Bay Parade. Siobhan, just on the fixing up of the seal there, are we paying or is the contractor paying to remediate that? How does it usually work when a seal like that fails?
That largely depends on where the fault lies with the failure. So if the fault lies with workmanship, then we usually ask the contractor to pay for it. In this particular instance, it's a shared risk that both the council and the contractor entered into, so we'll be paying for that because we were well aware of what was going on, and we were on site when it happened as well.
And that's because it was later in the season, is that right, Brad?
It was largely due to the spray rate of the bitumen. So the design called for a particular spray rate of the bitumen, which we went ahead and we did, and we got it slightly wrong on the day, and that's resulted in the seal failing. I will point out that it's only 100 meters of 1.5K of seal that's actually failed quite badly.
Thanks, Brad.
Councillor Young.
So I've got another question about the library, but I think this isn't here, which is really, I'd just like to know how the size of library space compares in the new proposal compared to the old library, because I know there's concerns from the librarian community that the space is considerably smaller.
When you say librarian community...
Well, librarians,
oh, the librarians. So they've been the people who go to the library, or the librarians who?
People who are the librarian community of Wellington.
Right. So the design of the space has had full. They've been part of the design to ensure that they've got sufficient space for the library space versus capital E space versus.
How does it compare to the previous library space?
I don't know what those figures are, and I'm not sure James would have those figures off the top of the head, but we can get those for you.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
So one other question, which is the Evans Bay Cycleway. Some people are very concerned about. There's one stretch. So I don't know it because I won't be cycling on it. One stretch which is particularly dangerous, where they have to cross the road. I think, is that right?
Yep.
So can we do anything about that? Because I know someone said to me she was nearly in tears. She thought it was so dangerous.
Brad, I think you've dealt with this before.
This is the one that's being constructed. Yeah, we're looking into it, and we've got designers looking at that particular section of the road.
It's always meant to be a temporary solution while the rest of it gets constructed, I think, Councillor. Okay, any other questions? We're all good? Okay, well, I'd just like to say, well, I'm happy to move this. And Councillor Condi, second. Yeah, I won't say too much, but what I will say is this is a bit of a geeky thing to say, but when I first pulled open the spreadsheet and looked at it, I was in near tears of joy with how it was set out in diagrams and data and facts, and it took a little bit to navigate, but once I did, it became very, very easy, and I know that at least one member of the Herald reporting group also felt the same way. She promised to be here today, but she hasn't arrived up, but there you go. So just want to say congratulations to you and your team, Siobhan, for putting together, which I think is actually the backbone of what this infrastructure committee is all about, which is to monitor the execution of these projects. So this particular document is really what we hear about today, and that's possibly why we haven't had a meeting in a quarter. So there you go. So I'm very happy to move, and I thank everyone for their very good questions, and thanks officers also for your answers. Hopefully that's addressed a number of issues the public have raised as well. So I'm very happy to move this, and Councillor Condi, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. I'm also really just wanted to say thanks for the quality of the report, and I'm really appreciating each time we get it back, the little tweaks and improvements that have been made. I really particularly wanted to say I like being able to see the green, amber, red scoring for across cost and time and scope. I actually think that's really helpful. So that was a new addition that I just wanted to particularly say thank you for. It's great to see the strength of this reporting continuing to improve. And that's it. Kia ora.
Any debate? Councillor Calvert.
Thought you were getting away live. Hey, look, I as an ex-program manager, I do like this sort of stuff, but I do, whilst I think it's really important, I wonder whether we're losing something in terms of how do we keep just that sort of overarching strategic view of the really big things that matter to our city. And I think going forward, in particular next training, we need to think about how we do that, because we've had a lot of questions from elected members on where we're at with, say, Tanaka Civic Square, when we should really be on top of that as governors. So there's a sort of very high level things. This is the detail of how the projects are working. So really my comment is for the next triennium, whoever's around this table, and for officers, as to how do you add the richness so we're actually on top of where things are at with the big projects in our city.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else want to speak? Councillor Foon?
Extremely quickly, just to say big ups on the report, backing up everybody else. Really good to read. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll have a right reply saying thanks very much, Councillor Calvert. I think it is a high-level report, but if it can be brought up another level, maybe at a council level, then that can be something that can be worked on in my absence, at least. So anyway, I will. I'll be watching though. I'll be watching. God, Tom Hunt. Okay, so the motion's now been moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2, and the usual on the online. Won't be watching that closely, the sun's paying. Good. Okay, that's been approved unanimously, so thank you very much, colleagues. I think there is some lunch that's been ordered, but we'll push through and we'll complete this, I'm sure, because the next one is the item 2.4 actions tracking, which... Oh, sorry, it's the forward program, yes, which is what I meant, item 2.3, which I think we can dispense with quite easily, because there is no forward program, because this is the end. The Infrastructure Committee has completed all its projects. So I'm not sure we need a report from you, Siobhan. We will be moving into the next triennium, which possibly has a different committee structure. Obviously, the projects that are ongoing will be addressed in the next triennium, subject to any emergency meeting of the Infrastructure Committee that might arise on October 9 or earlier. Anyway, so I will move that we simply accept the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Matthews, thank you. I don't need to speak. I'm guessing no debate. Should we just vote? All in favour, hit the button that you will signal that. Thank you. That's been accepted unanimously. Thanks very much. The next item is the actions tracking. And I did signal earlier today that some people want to get out of here.
We heard you.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I'll ask Siobhan to introduce the report. Doesn't sound like there's going to be much debate on it.
No. So there are still 12 live actions just for so everyone understands how these work. So the ones that have been marked as complete were the ones that were live since last meeting. So essentially, when we revive this in whatever form of committee we have, you'll only see 12 live actions flowing on as a result of this. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Pennant.
Thanks, Siobhan. 2 questions. Sorry, if I missed the email about the earthquake program, or is that still to come?
No, it's still to come, but it'll be by the end of August.
Can I look, for me, as you know, this is a critical area of council business. Can I just ask why it was an email? Or for the next training, whoever's there will be oral reports because the next business scrutiny, I think.
Yeah, I think it was just because the agenda at the time, the agenda for Infrastructure Committee was extremely full.
Okay. And then the other question was, maybe Laurie's all over this, but Cycle, is there anything we can do to support them to grow their capacity so they can actually do the work that we need them to do?
So we have met with them and sorry, but I'd need to catch up with Chris as to how that's gone.
Yeah, because it was great that we got them, you know, they were starting to move, and even if they could do a small part of Miramar, even if not all of it, like, you know, just to
I'll come back to you.
Don't stop.
I'll come back to you on what the outcome of that meeting was.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thanks very much, Siobhan. I will happily move this paper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Foon. I'll just say a few words. I did go through it in a bit of detail, knowing that this would be the last meeting and that I wanted to make sure that those actions that were needed to be taken through to the next trinium were to be captured. So I appreciate spending some time with me this morning, Siobhan, and capturing those. And I'm thrilled, actually, that there's not too many to be taken through. So the next guys will have a new zero forward program and a handful of action items to look at. So my seconder, Councillor Foon, would you like to speak? No. Is there any debate? No? Okay. Let's vote in the usual way. Good, and that's unanimous. Right. Okay, so we need to go into public excluded for commercially sensitive matter, but before we do, I'll just say a few words because everyone online is probably going to head off after this. So I'm just going to say what an absolute privilege it's been to chair this committee. I also want to pay tribute to my Deputy Chair, Councillor Condi, who's been rigorous as always. I was very excited when we were appointed together, and I think we've worked really well together, so it's been a great balance. Thank you also to Siobhan and your team. Not easy at all at times, but nevertheless a very important contribution that this committee's made to the city. So thank you all very much. I'll now move into public excluded. We need to vote until yes. I know. I've got to move the motion. So officers recommend that public is excluded from the following part of the proceedings of the meeting, and I'll move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Day. Is there any debate? Panic? Where's no? No. I'll put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, press 1. Those against, press 2. Brad, do you want to come forward and talk us through all this? It's been, accepted. Public arena. We're back in. Hello, everybody, online. So we will now. We'll conclude the meeting. Thanks to all of you, both online, public, and councillors and officers, etc. I declare the meeting closed. Please stand and say the karakia. Unihia, 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 ki te uru, tapu nui, ki o atia, ki mama, te nako, te tinana, te wairua. I te ara, takatu, kua rongo, whakakaia, a ki ringa, ki o atia, ki o ata, ara, ki o ata. Thanks very much, guys.